Hey everyone, my name's Rodney and I'm just big boned, and it is day 124 of my weight loss journey. And last week I did something a bit different and I shared a personal story about me and the important lesson that I learned from that story. And your support and comments for that video was amazing. I was really touched, and most importantly, it tells me you want to hear more stories like that. So I'm here with another personal story, and probably one of the more personal stories I've got. Today I wanted to talk to you all about my mum. My mum, she was born in the mid 1950s, and she was the youngest of six kids. And by the time she was born, the eldest of the kids, of her eldest brother, was in his 30s and having kids of his own by this stage. So my mum sort of grew up a bit alone, and she was more closer to some of nieces and nephews than to actual brothers and sisters. And she didn't tell me a lot about her childhood or growing up. And my grandmother and my grandfather were not in a happy relationship. According to my mum, my grandfather was abusive, he was violent, and he was a drunk. And they eventually split up. And so my mum grew up really without the dad figure in her life, and she grew up hating her dad. And I don't think she ever went to his funeral when he died, like a year before I was born. So I guess for a lot of the time it was my mum growing up in a single parent household. And look, she never told me, but I got a really strong feeling there was some sort of abuse there towards her, some sort of physical abuse or something. But she never confirmed, and I never asked because I don't think I wanted to hear the answer. But she eventually left school in year 10, as you did at the time, because they couldn't afford for her to go on to school, and she became a nurse. According to mum, she always said at the time, at that stage, there were only three things women could do. They could be hairdressers, they could be teachers, and they could be nurses. I never wanted to be a hairdresser. We couldn't afford for me to go on to year 12 to become a teacher, so I became a nurse. And that's what she did. And by the time I was born, my mum was working in a nursing home with old people. And that's where she stayed. And wait for that to go past. She did have dreams and aspirations, but life gets in the way, and they sometimes they have to go out the window for more practicality. It's around about 1980 or so when she met my dad, and he had this was his second marriage, and he had two girls from a previous relationship, two half sisters. And actually my mum, I think, had two miscarriages before I was even born. And so I was born, and then a year later my brother was born, and that was our family unit. But sometimes life has a way of repeating on itself. And my dad was an alcoholic, and he was abusive towards my mum, and she left. And so she found herself a single parent raising two boys, and two young boys. I was so young, I have no memory of my parents together. That's how young I was. And my mum was raising us by herself on a single parent income. And in order for her to make enough money and to be available if we need it during the day, she worked a night shift. So she'd work all night, she'd come home, And when we were really little, she sort of would sort of fall asleep on the couch and sort of in front of us so she could hear. But yeah, she her sleep was never great. She did that for over 20 years. And you know, my mum was not a health conscious person, despite the fact she was a nurse. My mum was a massive smoker. She was a huge coffee drinker. She had a sweet tooth. My mum didn't drink water at all. I remember whenever I would drink water, when I was older, she always pulled his face and go, "Ugh, water." She never drank water. It was like, you know, fruit juice or soft drink or coffee in her case in the house. Just health was not a big part. She didn't exercise because, you know, she didn't have the time. You know, she would cook dinner and stuff like that. But yeah, she was not a health conscious person. She was overweight. She had hypertension and things like that. But otherwise, she was okay and didn't really pay much attention to these things. You know, she had hypertension. She took tablets for it, and she soldiered on. And this is the way life was for her. And it caught up to her in the end. It was 4th of January 2012. 4 days into a new year, and I'm like, yeah, this is going to be a great year. I'm going to smash this year, blah, 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 blah. And on my way home from work, and I get a call saying, I've got to go over to Mum's for my brother. She's got something to tell us. And we went over there. It was me, my brother, and his fiance at the time. And my mum sat us down and she said, I've had some scans and they've come back and I'm riddled with cancer. And by the time it was found, it was, you know, all through her intestines and that, but most importantly in her lungs. Now, it wasn't lung cancer, like it didn't originate as lung cancer. It started as ovarian cancer, but it had spread. And sent to an oncologist who said, look, I think we can do something. So she started chemotherapy, and you know, she sort of went on leave from work. She's like, I want to come back to work when this is done. And you know, she responded really well to chemotherapy, and things were looking promising. I was living out of home, but I moved back in. One, the house I was living was getting sold, but two, I moved back in with her and wouldn't look after her, take care of her. I spoke to her a lot. I think I helped a lot with her mental health, but I was just there. I was checking in on her and stuff like that. And this is the way 2012 was. I can honestly say 2012 was the worst year of my life, and that's probably when I was at my heaviest. 2012, I never weighed myself, but I predict I sort of ballooned out to 120 kilos. I look back at photos of myself from that time, and I don't like it. But I was going through a really tough time, and she was responding well. And then it was the October long weekend. I had the long weekend, and it was the Monday night of the last day of the long weekend. And you know, Mum's really weak, and she's sort of having trouble moving around, and had a talk with my brother, and she didn't want to go to hospital because she was afraid that if she went to hospital, she'd never leave. And so we decided that she could go stay for a couple of days at my aunt's house. My aunt her husband was recently sick and had died. And so they had a house equipped for this sort of thing. And my aunt was quite old. She had her daughters living there and around her. So there was a bunch of women that could help look after her. So she got in the car and I gave her a hug and I said, I'll see you in a couple of days. And my brother took her up to the hospital. Not to hospital, to my aunt's house. Took her to my aunt's house and waited a couple of hours, and he came back over afterwards. And he said, look, when she got there, she wasn't well. And, we spoke with my aunt and her daughters and that, and they decided the best thing was to call her an ambulance. And they took her to hospital, and she was at Motorvale Hospital, which ironically is a hospital she used to work at and she met my dad at. And so she was at the hospital, and we're on standby in case we're called. I don't remember exactly what time it was, but maybe 2, 3 in the morning, something like that. And I got woken up from a phone call. It was my brother saying the hospital's called us, we need to go over. So he came, picked me up. We went over to the hospital and we spoke to the doctor. He said, your mum's, she's okay, she's resting. She's wearing a CPAP machine to keep air and get air into her. And he said, look, it's the cancer in her lungs. It's basically destroyed her lungs. And we've got a couple of options. We could intubate her and keep her alive, but that's probably going to do more harm than good, and this damage isn't going to be repaired. Or we could make her as comfortable as possible, and we can eventually turn off the machine, and that will be it. So we had a quick discussion, and we knew my mum never wanted to be kept alive artificially, which is what the first option would be. So we made the decision to keep her on the CPAP machine, and we came back the next day and we called everybody. Everyone, family, friends, relatives, everyone, and said, this is it. She's, this is it. Come in and say goodbye. And all day, because we only had 2 people at a time. She was in intensive care, and for the most part of it, she was awake and lucid. I don't know if she knew what was going on. She has to have known, but she never said anything, and I never asked, because I didn't want to say that one thing that upset her. And all day, everyone was coming in to see her, knowing this was going to be the last time. And just over the course of the day, she was getting more and more morphine to make her more comfortable. And eventually she went to sleep, and she was still alive, and people coming to see her. And that afternoon it was like, okay, she's asleep now. She's not waking back up. We stopped the people coming to see her, and me and my brother were in the room. My brother's fiance was there, and ironically my cousin, who had just arrived late and sort of got caught there, and we sort of told the nurse, okay, we can take this machine off her, and we just sat there and we waited, and holding her hand and talking to her and everything. And I don't know how long we were sitting there, but it felt like forever. Part of me is thinking, what if this doesn't happen quick? What if she just lingers like this for a while? I don't think I could deal with that. And we took the machine off. I believe it was daytime outside, and all of a sudden it grew nighttime, and eventually the nurse came in and she said, yeah, she went a couple of minutes ago. I was expecting, what you hear in the movies, the flatlining machine or whatever, but didn't have that on. She was monitoring it all from outside, and she came in. She said she went a couple of minutes ago. My mum was 57 years old when she died, and I have no doubt that it was her lifestyle and her lack of health. While it didn't, there's no known cause of ovarian cancer. It was, she created this incubator for cancer to grow. And it's been 9 years, coming up to 9 years this year. And there's just so much that's happened since then, and there's so much she's missed. And what makes me the most sad is she wasn't there to see me get married. She never met my wife, but she never met my son. It's her first grandchild. She never met him, and I know she would have been wrapped with him. She would have loved him to bits, and he would have been really special to her. And she's missed out on these opportunities, I believe, because of her health and her attitude to health. And for the longest time, especially after she died, I was afraid of turning out like my parents. That was one of my biggest fears. And there's a lot of other things about them that I didn't want to happen to me, and I've overcome a lot of them, I feel. And I feel now that this weight loss journey that I'm on is sort of like the last part of me not becoming like my mum. I was about 37 when my son was born. So if I died at 57, my son's only going to be about 19 when he loses me. And that is just way too young. So I need to do all I can to stick around as long as I can. And I know this weight loss journey is, losing weight and being more focused on health is no guarantee I'm going to live a long life. But I think I've got the best chance because of it. And so that's a big driving force behind what I'm doing. And yeah, that's the story. It's one of many stories. I can tell you a heap of stories about my mum, and I probably will. But for now, I'm going to leave it there. What's one of your biggest driving forces behind your weight loss journey? Leave your answers in the comments below. I'd love to read them. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe and follow me on my journey. I've got over 120 of you following me and giving me so much love and support, and I thank you all for it, and I need more of it. So please hit subscribe and follow me. And if you like this video, if you're still watching, thank you. If this video has touched you in some way, please hit the like button and let YouTube know, hey, I like this video and I like this guy. I want more people to see it, because I think there's an important message in this video. And if you do too, please hit the like button. Feel free to share it. I'd love for you to do that. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. And just remember, I'm not fat. I'm just big boned.